Hello everyone. Welcome to my virtual panel, Autism in the Anime Community. I am James S. James, your panel host. I have been hosting panels on autism at anime cons since 2015. I have autism myself, and I'll never forget when I attended my first anime con when I was a high school senior in 2010. Like many other people with autism, I often felt like I was socially different and not always accepted by other people I met and other people that I would see every day when I was in school, but didn't always feel like I had something in common with them. And when I went to my first anime con, which was Anime Central in Rosemont, Illinois, I suddenly felt like I was in a place where I could be accepted for who I was as a unique person with autism, where I didn't have to worry about being judged negatively because of my autism, where it was okay to be my own self. And although I wouldn't get along with everyone at an anime con, at least somebody there would accept me for the unique person that I am and I identify as. And as the years passed, I continued going to anime cons where I continued feeling that acceptance. However, although I felt a lot of acceptance and a lot of people didn't judge me when I was at anime cons, that didn't stop me from still having issues and struggles when I attended anime cons and while I participated within the anime community. Therefore, I decided, after experiencing positive and negative things about attending anime conventions and participating in this community as a person with autism, and meeting a lot of other people with autism and making a lot of friends with autism while at anime cons, I decided it was time to talk about these issues and to host panels where I could talk about my experiences with autism here in the anime community and about the experiences of other people with autism I met and or made friends with here in the anime community. Since 2015, I have been hosting these panels to audiences comprised of people with autism, family members of individuals with autism, and sometimes just people who want to learn more about autism in the anime community, about the unique struggles as well as the positive things that people with autism can experience at anime cons and within our community. Now, usually when I host this panel in front of a live audience, I ask the audience, are you an individual with autism? Are you an individual that knows in their heart and soul they have autism, but may not have been formally diagnosed? Are you a family member of an individual with autism? Are you a parent of an individual with autism? Do you work with individuals with autism on a professional level? Or are you just an attendee that came here because you want to learn more about autism in the anime community? Now, unfortunately, in this virtual setting, I can't ask everybody watching this who you are and what brought you to this virtual panel. But what I can tell you is this. This panel isn't just for individuals with autism. It's for anyone who wants to learn more about autism in the anime community. Now, My panel is traditionally split up into 3 sections, covering 3 primary aspects of the topic of autism in the anime community. The first section is a discussion about what brings people with autism into the anime community. The second section is a discussion about the issues and challenges that people with autism can face within the anime community. And the third section, which is the final section, is a discussion about how the anime community can become more tolerant and accepting of people with autism within the anime community. I shall present each section with some of my own thoughts, as well as a summary of things that audience members have said in many panels I have hosted on this subject at various anime cons regarding each section. Usually, if this was a live panel that I would host at a con, I would encourage the audience to share their experiences in each section, especially audience members with autism. But since unfortunately we can't do that here in this virtual setting, I will just summarize things that audience members have told me throughout the years attending this panel at various cons. I will introduce each section, and between each section today, there will be an interlude comprised of musical stylings in which I will be playing songs popular within the anime community on my very own recorder. Thank you all for watching, and following our first interlude, I shall begin part 1 of this panel. Part 1. What brings people with autism into the anime community? I shall begin by sharing my experiences. My first introduction into anime started when I was 11 years old. That was the year that Pokemon became popular here in America. A year prior, Pokemon was first introduced here in the United States. And kids my age fell in love with Pokemon. When I was 11, I was in the 5th grade, and I had a pretty rough 5th grade year. I had a teacher who wasn't a bad teacher, but at the time, he just didn't understand the issues that I went through as a higher functioning kid with autism. He also had a hard time understanding the nature of how I was being bullied by a lot of my classmates in the 5th grade. But the thing that helped keep me going during my struggles in school was Pokemon. Every morning at 7 a.m. where I grew up, Pokemon was on. One episode, 5 days a week, from 7 to 7:30. And this was the first generation of Pokemon, the era when there was only 150 Pokemon, and the Pokemon rap was always played at the end of every episode. In the 5th grade as an 11-year-old, I often dreaded waking up in the morning because that meant I'd have to deal with, except for the weekends, another potentially miserable day at school. But I always enjoyed waking up to watch that one episode of Pokemon before I'd have to deal with the realities of a miserable school day. For 30 minutes, I could forget about the struggles that would come later in the day and watch my favorite show, Pokemon. At the time, if I woke up earlier, there was a show on called Mighty Max. And my younger sister, who sometimes would wake up with me, she enjoyed watching Mighty Max. And she noticed that the voice of one of the bird characters in Mighty Max had a voice similar to Judge Frollo. So she would often call that character Judge Frollo Bird. Although I didn't get into Mighty Max the way I did Pokemon, watching Pokemon was such an important way of escaping the realities of a harsh life I felt I had back when I was a kid. So for me, I first became an anime fan as a kid watching Pokemon because anime was an escape from the struggles I experienced every day. When you have autism, your life sometimes can just suck. You can feel like there's nothing to live for, that life is just misery. Living in a world where teachers don't understand you if you're in school, where your coworkers and your boss might not always understand you when you go to work. And it can be very hard to live each day knowing you're going to have those struggles. But sometimes one escape from the harsh realities of life can be anime. And for me as a kid, at first, what attracted me to anime was that it was an escape from the struggles I went through as a child in daily life. Anime and I parted ways as I grew up, but then when I went to high school, I returned to the anime community when I discovered that anime wasn't just a way of escaping the struggles of life. It was also a way of making friends with others, having common ground with other people who sometimes felt like they were the social rejects, the social outcasts from the popular kids. When I was in high school, my interest in anime enabled me to make many friends, and it was through those friends that I learned about anime cons, which eventually resulted and led me to attend my first anime con as a high school senior, right before I finished high school. Throughout the years of hosting this panel, I have encouraged many attendees and many audience members with autism to share their stories regarding what brought them into the anime community. Many audience members tell me the following. Anime was something predictable that they could understand and relate to, in contrast with the chaos that they lived in, while the world around them didn't make sense, while the world was comprised of social norms and rules that they couldn't understand. Anime was a predictable thing in a world of chaos. Other people I have listened to in my panels have talked about the struggles they dealt with growing up in families that couldn't understand their autism, and how, because of those struggles, anime gave them a social circle so that they could sometimes escape with their friends the struggles they dealt with in their family life. And finally, the most common thing that audience members have told me as to the reason why they were brought into the anime community as individuals with autism was the sense that anime cons and the community represented a safe place for them. A place where they could meet other people with autism that enjoyed anime, and where they could meet other people who may not have autism and may be different than them, but they could still connect to and connect with because of their shared interest in anime. Indeed, there are many people who attend anime cons who know in their heart and soul that they have autism but may not have been formally diagnosed. Sadly, due to flaws in how we diagnose autism, there are always going to be people who feel they have autism, who can sense they have autism, who can detect their autistic tendencies, but may never be formally diagnosed. And many of these individuals might not always socially feel like they relate to people in the autism community because they don't have a formal diagnosis. But since anime cons are designed to be inclusive of anyone who enjoys anime or anyone who wants to attend and enjoy themselves, sometimes these individuals might find a social community in the anime community and at anime cons where they feel accepted and can meet other people who understand them and will acknowledge and accept them for being different and not judge them for having those autistic tendencies, even if they are not formally diagnosed with autism. This is why, whenever I host this panel, I am always careful to make sure that I ask the audience, are you a person who knows in their heart and soul they have autism, but have not been formally diagnosed? To make sure that if there's someone there and they know in their heart and soul that they have autism, but like I said before, haven't been formally diagnosed, that they feel included too. It's very easy to have every symptom of autism, but for various reasons, not have access to a diagnosis. But here in the anime community, many of those people feel like they are accepted and feel like people tolerate them in ways that many other places in our society do not tolerate them. And for that reason, those individuals, alongside people who have been formally diagnosed with autism, join and are attracted to the anime fan community. Stay tuned after our interlude for part 2 of this virtual panel. Part 2. What are some of the unique struggles and challenges that people with autism can face within the anime community and at anime cons? One of the things I had to realize when I went to anime cons over the years is that although I found an environment where I was accepted for who I was and was tolerated by most people who were willing to accommodate my autistic tendencies and quirks that anime conventions, like any other place in society, were not perfect. I still went through some unique issues and challenges at anime cons and within the anime community. And I met many other people with autism who also went through various struggles and challenges as well. Probably one challenge that I went through when I started attending anime conventions is that because of my autism, I struggle with facial recognition. I could know somebody or meet somebody and then form a good friendship with them, but because of my autism, I sometimes don't recognize them when I see them. And at anime conventions, sometimes we dress up in different cosplays where we can look very different based on our different cosplays and or what we choose to wear at different times during an anime con. Sometimes we might have a cosplay we wear during the day, a rave outfit that we might wear when going to a rave at night, and then a different cosplayer outfit the next day. And there would be times when I would make friends with someone at a con, and then they'd change their cosplay, and I'd walk right by them and not even know that this was the same person that I just met or made friends with earlier. Or if I knew somebody I'd known for various years at cons or elsewhere, or somebody I was friends with that I then saw in cosplay at a con, I sometimes didn't recognize them. And I often have had the awkward experience where I would talk to somebody that I thought I knew, and it turned out they were a total stranger. In fact, I can tell you right now, I look a lot different outside of my standard cosplay, James from Team Rocket and Pokemon, than I do when I cosplay as Team Rocket. Another issue that I've had to deal with when I'm at anime cons is that I'm a big, tall guy, but I'm also not someone who wants to hurt or upset anybody. I have autism, and sometimes being big and tall and autistic, I can act in ways that can intimidate people. Plus, I'm also a very social autistic. I'm not a classical antisocial person with autism who doesn't like to talk to other people and socialize. I love interacting with people. I get energized socializing. And sometimes being a big, tall, super social guy with autism, I can intimidate people. Sometimes people can feel like I'm harassing them when in reality, I just want to be their friend or get to know them. And sometimes I can even intimidate or upset other people with autism who aren't always as social as I am. However, when people with autism are mistaken as harassers and are mistaken as invading people's space, even though many of them don't want to upset people and feel really bad when they learn they've upset somebody, this ignores another reality that we face at cons, that we often are at a higher risk as people with autism for being harassed by others. And I've been in a unique position at cons where I've been mistaken as a harasser, but I've also been harassed at cons. And, some people think, hey, you're a big, tall guy. how can you be harassed at an anime con? Aren't you going to be the one mistaken as a harasser? And I tell them, yes. Sometimes I do things not intending to upset people that make them think I'm harassing them. And I've worked so hard to change my behavior and not upset people. And I've learned a lot by attending anime cons over the years. But in some cases, I've been harassed too. I was at an anime con once with a female friend with autism where people said some really inappropriate things to make us feel uncomfortable. Things that no one should say to anybody, whether or not they have autism. Things so inappropriate, I can't mention them here on this virtual panel. And if I did, I would get in trouble with the con for doing so. But what I like about anime conventions, what I like about anime cons is that they acknowledge that people can equally be victims and be misunderstood regardless of their shape and size. You can be big and tall and still be harassed. You don't just have to be a Wonder Woman cosplayer to deal with harassment. Now, here are several things that audience members have shared to me throughout the years regarding issues and struggles they have dealt with at cons. Probably one of the main things that audience members have told me is that although anime cons may be places where they feel accepted, and they may be places where they can make friends, anime conventions can be very overwhelming and can sometimes cause a lot of sensory overload. Let's face it, anime conventions are loud, boisterous places. There's crowds of people everywhere in every hallway. And it can take a long time to go up and down an elevator at a hotel at a con because there's so many people going up and down the elevator. The vendor halls can be loud, bustling places packed with people talking to everyone every which way. And the rave dances are extremely loud, where dance music is played at amazingly loud levels, where people dance to their heart's content. Now, some people at anime conventions enjoy those events, but for other people with autism, those environments can be extremely overwhelming. And sometimes, even when you want to go to a convention to feel accepted, you can still develop sensory overload from that overwhelming environment. Stay tuned for part 3 of this virtual panel. Part 3. What can the anime community do to become more accepting of individuals with autism? Now, one thing that I'm going to say off the bat is that in many ways, the anime community and anime cons already do so many things to help people with autism feel accepted. Many anti-harassment policies, especially the meme "cosplay is not consent," have done so much in helping people with autism feel more comfortable and safe when attending anime cons and participating in the anime community. In addition, many of these policies have also helped a lot of people with autism understand many proper boundaries related to personal space and other social boundaries that many of their teachers might have tried to teach them in school during social skills instruction, but they might not have always understood when they learned about personal space and other social boundaries while in school. Another thing that anime conventions do well is that, unlike so many other places in society, they don't expect you to know the expectations and the social rules when you go to an anime convention. When you register at a convention, whether you're pre-registered, whether you're there doing on-site registration, when you check in at the registration area, typically at most anime cons, you're given a booklet. And in that booklet, you don't just see the schedule of the con, you don't just read about the guests at the con, you're also given a list of all the social rules and expectations that you are expected to follow at each anime con. And in doing so, people with autism don't have to feel like there are any surprises. So many times when you have autism, there are so many unspoken rules that you're expected to follow in social settings, but you just don't understand, and you don't always pick up when non-autistic people around you just pick them up instinctively. Yet here at anime cons, so many organizers understand that many of their attendees aren't just going to be able to pick up those unspoken rules. So in your registration booklet, you're given a list of what those rules and expectations are. And some of those rules can be different based on different cons. One example is that since curfew rules are different in different cities, some cons are going to have to follow different policies for attendees under the age of 17 or 18 based on those policies. Or a bigger con might have more restrictions on bulkier costumes because of the larger amount of people at the con versus smaller cons. But most cons have some rules in common. Like, you're not going to find an anime con that's going to tolerate gratuitous harassment. You're not going to find an anime con that's going to tolerate people basically doing dumb behaviors like throwing glitter and other things off balconies in hotels. And because anime conventions tell you those rules, that can be such a breath of fresh air for attendees with autism who, as I've mentioned before, don't have to live in fear that they're going to just break a social rule without realizing it. However, that doesn't mean that there are still things that anime cons and the anime community can do to help people with autism feel more accepted. Probably the one thing that people in the anime community can do is, when they're talking to people with autism, instead of looking at the differences that people with autism can have, we can look at things that we have in common. You might be interested in Pokemon or Sailor Moon, and someone you might meet at a con might also be interested in Pokemon and Sailor Moon, and might also have autism. And you can focus on the differences between them having autism and you being typical, or sometimes them having a different form of autism than your autism, or you can realize, hey, this person I've met is just as much a fan of Pokemon, Sailor Moon, or whatever anime I'm into, and they might be a cool person, and I might be able to make friends with them or get along with them based on our shared interest of a specific anime we both enjoy. In the end, anime cons are great in that they compel people not to see each other as strangers, but all as friends together, sharing their love of anime. In addition, as people with autism, we need to realize that the same rules that were created to protect anime attendees and attendees at our cons are here to protect us too. If someone's harassing us, we have just as much a right as people with autism to go to a security person at a con and talk about what we're going through as anyone else. And as attendees with autism, we need to be helping security at conventions, whether it's convention security, whether it's hotel security at the hotel where the convention's being held, or the convention center where the con is being held, about our issues. We need to be upfront and tell them, here are the struggles we go through. Here are things we can be vulnerable with. And also, here's how to approach us if you need to approach us as convention security, so that convention security becomes aware as much as they can about the struggles that we go through, and also to understand that we are just as much attendees as people without autism, and we have a right to be protected at anime conventions as well. One thing that audience members have shared with me when I go through this final section during my autism panel is that ultimately, the biggest thing that an anime convention can do to help people with autism feel accepted is something it already does. Helps people realize that in the end, we're all people. We all have the same unique needs as people. We all need to eat at certain times of the day. We all need acceptance by others. And we all need people that will accept us for who we are. And anime conventions have taken the lead in creating that atmosphere where we can talk freely to people and not be scared of them and see them as others and strangers. Instead, we can see them as potential friends, people that might accept us for who we are. Now, I'll admit, we aren't going to get along with everybody at an anime con, but we still should fight to be accepted and respected for who we are at anime conventions. Thank you for watching my virtual panel, Autism in the Anime Community. May you have an amazing time at Virtual Anime Next and have an amazing day. I am James as James, signing off for now.